My name is Chloe. I am 31 years old and harbor a concealed narrative within myself. My past has haunted me for years. It is a narrative I have concealed in silence. It reveals a truth too painful to face, a burden too onerous to endure. Life possesses a cruel tendency to test our resilience, presenting us with unforeseen trials that can shatter our existence, leaving us irrevocably altered. Transformed, I never anticipated bearing such a burden within me, a secret that perpetually looms over my existence. Life is neither a narrative of romance nor only a commemoration of familial connections. The narrative explores the complexities of convoluted relationships, unexpressed yearnings, and the sacrifices made for self-preservation. While society often praises love as the foundation of marriage, my experiences with my mother and stepfather revealed otherwise. From his arrival, discord permeated our household, creating an unsettling atmosphere that eluded my understanding. It soon became evident that my mother, Sarah, was merely a pawn in his machinations, with his true intentions directed towards me. A woman of extraordinary strength and resilience, she had devoted herself to her small fashion boutique following my father's demise, shouldering the responsibilities of single parenthood with unwavering determination, serving as my role model. The model exemplified independence, and Grace's life progressed at a consistent tempo. My mother devoted herself to her business while I focused on my studies. We formed a partnership, exemplifying the strength of female resilience. Subsequently, the university emerged as a portal to a realm beyond my mother's safeguarding. This period marked a newfound liberty filled with exhilarating opportunities and unforeseen interactions, during which I encountered Mr. Hayes, a philosophy lecturer who would profoundly change the trajectory of my life. Mr. Haynes exuded a captivating presence, and his lectures were imbued with enthusiasm. That sparked my curiosity. He did not simply instruct in philosophy, but provoked my perspectives and urged me to interrogate the world surrounding me. Our post-class discussions evolved into a ritual, and I became captivated by his intellect and enigmatic allure. However, a growing sense of unease began to infiltrate my thoughts. There was something amiss. His gaze was peculiar, imbued with an intensity that rendered me uncomfortable. It lacked the neutral observation characteristic of a teacher and instead conveyed a lingering intimacy that sent shivers down my spine. Initially, I dismissed it as mere imagination, but as time progressed, the sensation intensified. His eyes appeared to penetrate my being, their depths harboring unspoken meanings I could not decipher, leaving my thoughts ensnared in confusion. I attempted to justify his conduct, to persuade myself that I was misinterpreting his motives. Nevertheless, his acts intensified. Enhance his presence more. Intrusively, he would discreetly place himself closer than required, his contact lingering for an excessive duration. Prolonged the boundaries that ought to have existed between a teacher and a pupil. Diminished the esteem I formerly had for him. Transformed into something disquieting, I began to appreciate our encounters, devising excuses to evade persistent look and unpleasant overtures. I initiated a distancing strategy, maintaining brevity in our chats and rejecting his offers of more assistance as my urge to elude his scrutiny intensified. With each passing day, I grew increasingly resolute in my efforts to distance myself from Mr. Hayes. I employed various strategies, such as positioning myself further back in class, minimizing eye contact, and occasionally arriving late to school to evade encounters with him prior to lectures. I rationalized that by avoiding him, I could ultimately restore a sense of normalcy, free from the discomfort of his disconcerting glances and gestures. I may be able to mitigate the anxiousness. The tension that had accumulated within me led me to maintain my distance for the remainder of the school year. Initially, this approach appeared effective, as everything felt normal again, and the discomfort seemed to be behind me. However, I was unaware that the sense of safety I had established was just transient. I returned after a year of attending school. Upon returning home, my mother was transformed, exhibiting a greater sense of happiness. Her eyes gleamed with an unusual brilliance, a radiance I had not witnessed in years. Frequently, I saw her smiling to herself, as if cherishing a personal delight. Intrigued, I inquired about it, but she only dismissed my curiosity with a soft chuckle. While we were seated together in the living room one afternoon, she expressed her contentment regarding the improvement of her life. Her face radiated excitement, and her eyes conveyed unmistakable joy as she leaned in to inform me that she had met someone special whom she wished to introduce to me. Witnessing her happiness filled my heart. For many years, my mother had nurtured me alone with affection, sacrificing much of herself to provide me with a secure life. I was sincerely pleased that she had found a partner. The one who introduced her to joy instilled a palpable sense of enthusiasm on that day. The house was meticulously arranged, the dining table set with precision by my mother. I observed the anticipation in her eyes, reflecting her hope for a future she truly deserved. When the doorbell rang, my heart raced with excitement as I stood in the living room, envisioning the man who would bring my mother the happiness she sought. However, upon opening the door and seeing Mr. Hayes, my heart sank. A shock, unlike any I had ever experienced, seized me, and I became immobilized, incapable of comprehending what I was observing. All the unease and discomfort I felt around him surged back with overwhelming clarity. The man my mother adored, the man she introduced to me with such warmth, was the very individual I had been attempting to evade. A tempest of thoughts erupted in my mind. Why him? When did they meet? Did he harbor any intentions? The disquiet in my heart intensified as memories of his lingering gazes and disquieting gestures flooded my mind, rendering clear thought impossible. I glanced at my mother, desperately seeking any indication that she realized the peculiarity of the situation. She remained blissfully oblivious, still beaming with the joy of someone presenting a guy she profoundly trusted. Mr. Hayes entered, his grin radiant. He greeted me warmly with a calm and friendly demeanor, feigning surprise at the coincidence of discovering I was my mother's daughter. I attempted to reciprocate his surprise, yet internally, I was in turmoil. My mother remained innocent and oblivious to my inner conflict, prompting me to laugh nonetheless. Grateful for the unforeseen link, she conversed with Mr. Hayes. While engaging in passionate discourse about this coincidence with delight, I remained oblivious to the turmoil it was inciting within my heart, as an unsettling sense of uneasiness enveloped me. A singular question persisted in my thoughts: who was Mr. Hayes, and what was the purpose of his appearance? In my mother's life, she occupied a role markedly distinct from the one I recognized. Could this genuinely be a coincidence, or was there a concealed element, something beyond my perception? From that day onward, life appeared to revert to normal. Mr. Hayes exhibited no unusual behaviors. I perceived no cause for concern as he and my mother had a deeper relationship there. In relationships that appeared effortless, my mother's happiness was evident. She radiated joy daily, her laughter frequent and sincere. It was not long before she chose to remarry, and Mr. Hayes officially became my stepfather. Our family life progressed seamlessly, characterized by tranquil harmony as time elapsed without any disquieting indications. From Mr. I began to contemplate whether I had been overanalyzing the situation, whether my original concerns were baseless, stemming from the stress induced by the numerous changes occurring in both my mother's life and my own. Observing her happiness, I found myself relinquishing my worries. Despite my concerns and anxieties, her joy was contagious, and for the first time in years, I felt a true sense of relief. I came to embrace their love and extend my blessing. From the depths of my heart, I desired my mother to experience the pleasure she merited and the opportunity to live with love and friendship. Over time, Mr. Hayes became a familiar presence in our lives, exhibiting respect, supportive and seamlessly integrating into our family. I gradually dismissed my earlier anxieties as mere figments of an overactive imagination. Observing his kindness and dedication in caring for my mother, I ultimately came to believe he was a wonderful husband and a member of our family. By the time I turned 22, I had graduated from university and was seeking my first job. Although I had not yet secured the ideal position, I chose to assist my mother at her fashion store, which allowed us to spend more time together. Collaborating closely, Mr. Hayes frequently visited to offer assistance during his free time. Consequently, operations proceeded seamlessly, and any residual uncertainties I harbored regarding him had long dissipated. He appeared to be a truly supportive partner to my mother and a reliable presence in my life. However, then came what would ultimately become the worst. The day my life changed, I was afflicted with a fever that rendered me weak and fatigued, incapacitating me from visiting the store. As customary, my mother urged me to repose. I remained at home with only Mr. Hayes, as he had no work obligations that day initially. I did not have any concerns or suspicions. Over the years, I had grown to see him as trustworthy, a truly virtuous individual who profoundly loved my mother, who was resting in my room. I sought to alleviate the temperature and exhaustion via rest, anticipating a tranquil day. To recuperate, however, that tranquility was short-lived. The unforeseen event occurred that day at the residence I had always regarded as a sanctuary. Mr. Hayes entered my room holding a glass of water and some pills, informing me that they were painkillers intended to expedite the reduction of my fever. His voice was gentle and reassuring, and nothing in his demeanor raised any suspicions. Dazed by the fever, I accepted the pills without hesitation, desiring only to rest and recuperate. I swallowed the pills with the water he provided, oblivious to the fact that this was merely the prelude to an unimaginable sequence of events. At that moment, everything appeared normal. Initially, everything appeared normal after ingesting the tablets. I did not observe any immediate alterations, and nothing looked out of the ordinary. I remained in a state of awareness, anticipating the imminent effects of the medication and a subsequent reduction in my temperature. My circumstances appeared normal, then around 20 minutes later, a change occurred. Mr. Hayes re-entered the room, this time devoid of any items, no drink, no medicine, yet there was an unsettling expression in his eyes. That instilled a profound sense of dread within me as I attempted to sit up. A sense of terror enveloped me, rendering me immobile as a numbing numbness coursed through my body. Rendering me utterly powerless, every bit of strength seems to dissipate. Rendering me immobile, I endeavored to resist the sensation. Desperate to escape, I could only remain still, eyes wide open as he proceeded. Although his look was serene, a gleam in his eyes induced a shudder. Down my spine, I experienced a fight to command my body to move, yet not even a single finger reacted. Helplessness transformed into terror as he bent over me, his face only inches from mine. Then he smiled, but this time it was not the warm grin I had grown to anticipate, instead, it was icy. An unsettling smile that has a malevolent undertone, followed by his softly spoken voice. However, it was chillingly evident, I had anticipated this moment for an extended period, and I was appalled, incapable of understanding what I was hearing. My mind whirled as I attempted to comprehend the sudden reality of the situation. Every prior concern and doubt surged back with excruciating clarity. The nightmare I believed to be a mere figment of my imagination was materializing before me. He seated himself beside me, his eyes assessing and a malevolent smile gracing his face, leaving me immobilized. Powerless, I was compelled to listen as he articulated each word, which pierced the air, unveiling a terrifying truth I had never envisioned. He disclosed that he had harbored feelings for me since the onset of college and had desired to approach me from the very beginning, yet he observed that I remained perpetually guarded. My reluctance to permit his proximity resulted in his pursuit of alternative methods to integrate himself into my life without my consent. Mr. Hayes commenced an investigation into my background, delving into my academic history and familial circumstances. Upon uncovering my mother's predicament, he formulated a strategy to circumvent my direct resistance. I would do this by earning my mother's trust. He gradually approached her, establishing a connection that garnered her trust, ultimately becoming her husband and integrating himself into our family as a seemingly loving partner. Listening to his twisted confession felt akin to descending into an abyss of despair so profound that it threatened to engulf me. I could scarcely comprehend that everything I had accepted as normal, including my mother's happiness, had been meticulously orchestrated, a deception designed with a singular objective, to draw near to me. After he concluded, Mr. Hayes moved even closer, his eyes reflecting a dark satisfaction as he regarded my immobile form. The gentleness he had previously exhibited towards my mother had vanished, his gaze was now avaricious and frigid. Every attempt I made to recoil from him felt futile. My heart raced within my chest, yet my body remained paralyzed, unresponsive, a captive. In accordance with his intentions, Mr. Hay leaned over me, his hands infringing upon my body, his touch a searing emblem of shame and revulsion. Each second elongated into an eternity, every excruciating moment a testament to my helplessness. I was ensnared in a nightmare, my body immobilized, my voice muted, my world, once a sanctuary of safety and familiarity, fragmented into countless shards. I longed to resist, to scream. I attempted to claw at him, but my limbs were restrained, and my voice was stifled in my throat. Time warped and distorted, each tick of the clock represented an eternity of anguish. I endeavored to retreat into my head, seeking solace in the recollections of more joyous moments. However, the harrowing reality continually drew me back. The paralysis and complete loss of control intensified the terror that surged through my veins. Each violation eroded my sense of self, rendering me feeling shattered and desecrated. When it ultimately concluded, a profound emptiness engulfed me in the room. Experienced a chilling emptiness, as though the air had been entirely extracted. Mr. Hayes rose, readjusting his attire. His expression was one of indifference, as though he had merely executed a routine task devoid of emotional significance. He left me shattered and isolated amidst the ruins of my innocence, while my mind spiraled in a tumult of confusion, anger, and disbelief. How could the man my mother cherished, the man I endeavored to accept, behave in such a manner? Impose such anguish that the burden of treachery, fear, and humiliation loomed to suffocate. Mr. Hayes cast a final glimpse at me, his eyes without warmth or remorse, before vanishing from view. As the effects of the medication gradually waned, a semblance of control returned to my body. I felt feeble, my head spinning. However, a fundamental impulse to flee drove me onward with trepidation. I adjusted my attire with my hands. Desperate to eliminate any evidence of the violation, my gaze landed on the phone on the bedside table, a lifeline amidst this nightmare. With unsteady steps, I reached for it, my fingers fumbling as I dialed 911. The operator's calm voice provided reassurance, serving as a beacon of hope in the darkness as I recounted my story, my voice trembling. Overcome with passion, the words flowed forth in a cascade of anguish and trepidation. The arrival of the police was a pleasant sight. Amidst the stifling hush of the home, Mr. Hayes was apprehended, his head down in resignation as though he had anticipated this outcome all along. My mother came shortly thereafter. Her expression was marked by uncertainty and concern as our eyes met. The dam within me shattered, and tears flowed down my cheeks as I narrated the awful incident in my voice. Quaking with every utterance, the hue vanished from my mother's visage. Her countenance conveyed a blend of shock and pain as she broke into weeping, her body trembling with remorse and regret. "I'm so sorry," she mumbled. Her voice was repeatedly infused with sadness. However, I recognized that no apology could rectify the harm inflicted that day. Our lives were irreversibly transformed. My mother, overwhelmed with remorse, withdrew. Retreating within herself, unable to absolve her own ignorance, she shuttered her business in pursuit of solace via self-imposed exile. Mr. Hayes was sentenced, a meager consolation for the profound anguish he had caused. The wounds he left on my spirit persisted as a continual reminder. This encounter served as a reminder of the abuse I faced. I learned that quiet is a perilous ally to malevolence, and confronting the truth, regardless of its discomfort, is the sole avenue to recovery. I regret not having spoken up earlier. Had I disclosed my fears to someone, this tragedy might have been averted. However, the past is immutable. All I can do is progress, bearing the burden of my experience while seeking strength amidst adversity. My mother and I were both scarred by the same betrayal, which continues to influence our lives. Perpetually tethered by our collective pain, yet we are survivors, and we shall discover a path forward to restore our life from the remnants of that ordeal.